Welcome back to another episode of Unclocked and Unbothered. Today's guest and I have something very in common that I think is going to make this conversation really real really quickly. We both got laid off, we both took it as a sign, and we both ended up building something that is genuinely ours. Jessica Lamb is the host of the Mama Making podcast, now 4 seasons deep, a show centered on moms making an impact in their communities, in their work, and in everyday spaces that shape the world. She's also the founder of Collabs Creative, a boutique digital marketing company focused on telling the real stories of small business owners. And she describes her entire business philosophy as building from intuition, authenticity, and alignment. She's been navigating motherhood and an ADHD diagnosis, postpartum mental health, imposter syndrome, and building a business that actually supports her life all at the same time. And she's doing it without the hustle culture playbook. Jessica, welcome to Unclocked and Unbothered. I've been looking forward to this one.
Yeah, thank you for having me. That was a beautiful intro. Thanks.
Of course. Yeah, there's so much to dive into, but really what I want to start off with is the layoff because you described starting your business as almost accidental. So what actually happened when you lost your job and how did a business come out of that?
Yeah, so I think it's important to back up a little bit in that I did not finish college. I wasn't sure what my career path was going to look like. I decided to put college on hold and do a bunch of different jobs to see what came up for me. And I fell into nonprofit work. I worked my way up for about a decade working in nonprofit fundraising and project management. I took a newer role in project management focused no longer on nonprofit, but on behavioral health for a large health system. And so that's where my layoff happened. I was there for about 5 years. The larger health system had started doing some layoffs. And in the back of my mind, I kind of knew it was coming, but you never know when that's going to happen. And so myself, my the department lead who led our team and a couple other people within our circle got laid off, and it just rocked me in a way that I did not expect. And I was very comfortable where I was at. I had a very flexible job where I was able to be home with my son when I needed to, or take the day off when I needed to, whatever it looked like. And so for me, and I carried our insurance, I carried our health insurance, our life insurance. So it was very jarring for me to be like, okay, what do I do next? I'm very lucky that my husband has a really stable job. He not only owns his own business as well, but he works for a software company in marketing as well. So we had that stability of his job, and I had the severance that kind of allowed me to decide what was next for me. And in my years of many different experiences, got really good at marketing and digital marketing for people who simply didn't have the time to do it themselves, which a lot of times is small business owners and creatives. So I was like, you know what? I already had a couple clients that I was doing some work for here and there. And I was like, okay, I had 3 months worth of salary that I knew was coming to me. Let me let my clients know that I'm available for a little work, maybe get some more clients to do some projects here and there, just while I decide what is next for me. And I felt like it was a really, I felt the pressure. It felt like a really pivotal time to like decide what was going to be next. So I was like, okay, let me get an LLC just for the freelance, just to feel a little bit more protected and legitimize it a little bit. In my head, I was like, this is just temporary. I'm just gonna see what's next. Suddenly, I started gaining clients. I had my project clients here and there, but I got one full time, really huge client that kind of allowed me to step into this entrepreneurial role that I wasn't really planning on. So that's what I mean by accident, and that like it was almost a build it and they will come kind of a scenario that I did not expect. But very quickly was pushed into like, okay, this is a business now. You got to get it together.
Wow. No, it's really interesting how you didn't come from like a college background. All of your experience was built from the job that you had before you got laid off. And you had that ability to take those 3 months, even though it was a short amount of time, to take it as a sign and be like, let me start this business. I still can carry out the clients that I was gaining experience with from my old job and really just trust the process. And it slowly happened over time. Now, during those beginning stages of taking that like pivotal point of like, let's just take this as a sign to work on my business because you had those 3 months, did you ever put that pressure on yourself? Like, if it wasn't going to happen in 3 months, I'm going to go back and get a regular job or something else. How did that feel?
Really put the pressure on myself to figure it out and figure out what was next for me. I always have had an entrepreneurial spirit, and I think that's what has kind of led me through my life, and that I'm like can pretty much drop myself in anywhere and figure it out. So I knew that this like dream to have my own business was kind of in the back of my head, but I never really knew what. Like I knew I wanted to do something, but didn't know what it was going to be, and it just kind of happened to me. The pressure of being like I have to find something either on my own as like a business that I want to start, or figure out what industry I want to get into or what kind of role I would like to have. That was all super overwhelming to me. And I will say, on your imposter syndrome mention, that was so real for me during that time. I had a brief stint where I was like, okay, I have the option. It's in my list of options to be a stay-at-home mom. I've always dreamed to be one. I was home with my son for 2 weeks and I was like, I don't think this is for me. Like, this is what I dreamed of my entire life, of being a mom and staying home and raising my child and like making a beautiful home. And I got 2 weeks at it and I was like, hang on a second, I really got to figure this out because this is not for me. So that put a little bit of pressure on it too, because I was like, all right, well, that takes that option off the table. And I really do need to figure it out. So once I decided, like, let me lean into this a little bit more, this like digital marketing hub, that's when the imposter syndrome kind of started to creep in. Well, firstly, like, who am I without my career that I had before? I mean, like I said, I worked so hard for that career. And so for it to kind of end unexpectedly and not on my terms was almost like a grieving period of like, okay, this part of my life that was like my identity prior to having kids is over. And so I was like, okay, I need to step into something new. But yeah, that's when the imposter syndrome started to come up. Like, I was probably over a year into business before I would call myself a business owner or an entrepreneur, because I didn't go to school for it. I didn't work towards it. It just kind of happened. That was definitely a battle for sure.
Yeah, you mentioned that you had that entrepreneurial like spirit. So that's super important to know because you have that like in you, where that message of like, I knew that I always wanted to have a business, and you took that as a sign that will carry you out on that next adventure. And yes, the biggest fear that you wrote in the intake form was your imposter syndrome. And you kind of mentioned how it showed up for you in your day to day life. And as you continued your business, it was kind of hard to explain because you didn't have that background, right? And it just came from experience. So I think a lot of people, when they don't have that experience, they label it as like imposter syndrome. And it's totally valid, right? But I hear that word a lot come up. And that's how I feel sometimes as well. But it shows up differently for everybody. But how specifically would you say it showed up, maybe even now?
Yeah, I mean, it still creeps in. I think for me, it's very much I don't have a degree in this field. I truly only have experience. I think we're still in an age where people definitely value expertise, and I don't have the expertise on paper. And I think that that's like a long running story that I've had for myself. And like, you don't have a degree with your name on it, and you don't have a college that you went to. And I think I don't have like a resume full of specific like design and market strategy and all of that. It's all just things that I have learned and culminated from all of my jobs put together. So I think that is challenging for me, that on paper, I am not qualified to do this job. But in terms of experience, I have had experience in almost every industry sector doing a ton of different types of work. And so I feel like that brings a very different value, but it took me a very long time to come to terms with that it's its own separate type of expertise.
It's so true. Yeah, like experiences can go a long way, but it's hard to kind of put yourself in front of people when you don't have like necessarily what's on paper. You said that you have been building on vibes, which I love actually. I want to dig into that because I think there's something really important in that. What does that actually mean for you in practice? What does making a business decision on vibes look like versus making it from a strategy playbook or on paper?
For me, going on vibes was like, I don't know, I'm just going with what like feels right. But then I can't remember if I was talking to a friend or on a podcast when they were like, well, what does that actually mean? And so for me, looking inward and being like, okay, what does this mean that I'm like just winging it? I have the experience where like it's more intuition than just like a vibe or winging it. So for me, like the three things that I have pulled together that for me are going on vibes are alignment. Does it feel right? Does it feel aligned to make this decision or pick up this client or do this project? Does it feel right within me of like, yeah, this feels good, it feels right. The other thing is authenticity. Like I have a very hard time not showing up as myself and who I am. And so when I choose clients and I'm deciding if there's someone I want to go after or someone I want to welcome onto our client list, I have to think through like, does this feel aligned for me? Does this feel authentic? Is it an industry area that I have no idea about, but would love to get into and learn more about? Am I able to come to this client and be like, listen, we've never done construction projects before. I would love to learn about this industry. If you're interested in allowing us to have that learning curve, we're your people. And if I can't go to a client and be like, hey, I don't know anything about this, I have the expertise behind me, let's work together, and they're like, no, that's not what we're looking for, then it's not authentic to me. And the other thing is intuition. So like my gut is rarely ever wrong, and it took me, I'm going to be 34 this year. It has probably taken me 20 years to start listening to what my body is physically telling me when something is not aligned, authentic, or like in true intuition with me. And I'll give an example. I had a client that I took on. She was a referral from another colleague who I love, and the work was exactly what we do. It's a small business. It was a female led, and it was exactly what we do, the work that she was asking for. But in my initial meeting with her, I was like, I don't know if this is the right thing for me. And I wound up going with this client, adding her to our client list and starting projects. And very quickly was like, oh, I should have listened to myself. This was not the right match. I really do think from my prior experience in nonprofit that like there's someone for everyone. Like not every nonprofit organization aligns with what you are interested in doing or interested in supporting. There's a million nonprofit organizations out there that might feel more in tune with what you're looking for. And I feel the same exact way about clients. There's going to be a million clients. There's going to be a million marketing people, a million social media people, but finding someone that is within your alignment, within your authenticity, and in your gut, it just feels like, yes, this is the right person. And then the last thing, I got diagnosed with ADHD after having my son. I was 31 years old. I struggled so hard through school as a whole. It felt like it all kind of clicked to me when I got diagnosed with ADHD. And it has been several years of just kind of like trial and error and seeing what works. And for me, I have learned that using my ADHD kind of like a compass and in having systems where I'm like, this is what's coming up, this is what's important, this is a deadline, but also allowing my brain to just like go where it's going to go. If I have a hyper focus on something, I go for it. And like, I'm obviously the other stuff is going to get done, but for whatever reason, my brain's like, no, this is important. Kind of using my brain as a compass to be like, this project is interesting to me, or this client is interesting to me, or this industry is interesting kind of. And then on a day to day of like, I don't feel like doing a website redesign. I'd really like to just do some graphic design. I kind of allow myself to do that because I feel like I have worked for almost decades now against my own brain. And so utilizing the vibes and the ADHD compass this last year has been instrumental to continuing to work in entrepreneurship.
Your ADHD compass is, I love that how the way you worded it. Because what I've been finding is like a lot of my guests do have ADHD and they're also entrepreneurs. And I would love to kind of see or maybe talk about more of like the link between entrepreneurship and ADHD, because you can allow and honor that side of you. When you get the diagnosis, you probably felt like it resonated so much and you felt so understood, so that you didn't have to feel shame against it. And like a corporate job or like a regular job, let's say, we are given structures that don't necessarily work with an ADHD brain. So being able to kind of work on our own terms and create our own structures are probably a lot more instrumental in building a business and honoring that. And I love your three values, which is alignment, authenticity, and intuition, because it brings a topic that's super important when it comes to people, maybe with our imposter syndrome too, is thinking that they can't start a business because there are so many businesses like that out there and they already have the clients and maybe they will fit that area. But there's a client for everybody and vice versa. So it's so interesting that you mentioned that, because me having a podcast and your podcast might have the same kind of audience, but our takes are different, our perspectives is different, our intuition maybe can align or resonate differently with different people. And for example, being a mother. So what does building a business while mothering actually look like on a real day? Because I think people see the podcast, they see the business, but they don't see what's happening on the other side of being a mother.
Yeah, I think the ADHD and entrepreneurship section that you talked about is like, frankly, our brains are just very busy. And I think we constantly need to be like, okay, what's next? What's exciting? Entrepreneurship definitely brings that. And I think another part of that is like, in talking to more people with ADHD as I've gone through my own journey, we never really like fit the mold of what a good student is supposed to look like, or a good employee, or like we have really, really good strengths in one area and really lack in another area. And I think entrepreneurship can allow you the ability to play upon your strengths and then utilize your weakness as an area of excitement. Like our brains constantly need dopamine, and mastering a skill that we're not good at, I think under pressure can be great for people with ADHD. So just on that ADHD and entrepreneurship front, I think they kind of mesh in that area. I think entrepreneurship and being a mom is many pros and cons. So for me, being an entrepreneur allows me, in working for myself, creating my own schedule, allows me to like pretty much do whatever I want to do all day, with the knowledge that with every choice comes a consequence, a natural consequence. So I might take the day off and go to my son's school or a field trip, or like my son's home with me on Fridays. He's able to be home with me on Fridays, but that also means that in the mornings on Fridays, we're going to a coffee shop, we're sitting down for an hour, and I'm answering all my emails so that I can get off my computer for that day and just spend time with my son. What is great about entrepreneurship is that time and flexibility freedom that a regular job doesn't afford you. And also the consequence of like, well, I'll be a little more stressed this week knowing that I don't have a full day that I have to work on projects. And so I think that that can be hard for people who like a schedule, like it to know what they're going to expect every day. And entrepreneurship and motherhood are just, to me, I can only speak from my vision, are equal amounts of chaos, and that like every day is different, no 2 days are the same, and I kind of like it that way. Like you said, I think on social media we all kind of just see the highlight reel. I try to be a little more authentic on my socials about like what life looks like for me as a entrepreneur. My husband's an entrepreneur, he travels, I have a 3-year-old. Like life is crazy, and I think that the two things with entrepreneurship and motherhood are that like everything is unexpected, everything is changing all the time, and it's just that like adaptability piece. I know that everyone's experience is different, but I do kind of love the chaos of both of them. I have a friend who always talks about how me and my husband just thrive on chaos, and she's probably right, but I think that there's definitely something to being entrepreneurs and liking a little bit of like edge and things that are different. But yeah.
It's like liking the unpredictability. Entrepreneurship and motherhood have in common is that they're not 9 to 5. They both kind of require the same amount of attention, same amount of love. Your business is almost like a child, right? You have to take care of it. Being able to manage like the schedule and the chaos that comes around it. It's built differently. The brain is a bit different as well. So yeah, I wanted to kind of close off this segment about talking about the layoff as a catalyst, because unlike choosing to leave, the decision was already made for you when it came to that layoff part. And then you're left with this strange combination of like that terror and the freedom and the chaos all at the same time. And what you do with that window really tells a story of who you are, and it kind of guides you through the next few chapters. Takes a lot of strength. I wanted to talk about the hustle culture piece that is kind of like, I can see it kind of slowly shedding away, like kind of like that boss babe culture or that hustle culture, and kind of softening and understanding that there's both that masculine and that feminine energy that we have in us, and that we don't always need to be on this hustle culture grind. Because you said that you're trying to abandon it and redefine hustle culture, what success looks like for you. So, what have you had to unlearn?
Oh, that's a great question. I think I definitely came up in an era that was like, if you're not working more than your 40 hours, why are you here? Or like everyone else is doing XYZ, like you better get yourself in that position as well. Being that I didn't go to college and I did just get all my life experience from working different jobs, it was like I had no other choice but to hustle. Same for my husband. Like he started a business in his early 20s. It was like grinding constantly. And I think frankly, I burned out from that. And I didn't really make that choice to be like, okay, I'm done doing the hustle because I couldn't. I was like in a space where we were very much paycheck to paycheck. And it took me finding that stable 9 to 5 to be like, oh, I was really struggling in that time frame. Sometimes it takes a bout of depression to be like, whoa, this is not for me, and this is the culture I came up in, but doesn't need to be the one that I continue to work in. So I think when it came to building a business, frankly, that switch kind of came on where I was like, okay, what do I do? This is what I need. This is what it needs to look like, XYZ, right in the beginning. And then I think it took some like real soul searching to be like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I want to do it right and on my own terms. If I'm taking this huge leap of faith, I want it to be what I want it to be. And so for me in the beginning, I was like, okay, I'm only one person. I need to do this small. My first client is a huge client. And so I need to do this work well before I'm able to take on other work and do that well. And so for me, I was very intentional about building sustainably. And for me, I have a really big client for my first client. I have a 2-year-old and I have a husband who travels. And then I was able to get some support on my side and be able to take on more clients. It was making the choice both consciously to like sustainably build a business in a way that worked for whatever that like season in life is. At the end of the day, it's still on me. So I want to make sure I do have the time and availability to go to that performance at school or like go to lunch with a friend. The other day, my husband and I were like swept under the rug, tired on a Thursday in the middle of the day. We're like, let's watch an episode of Ted Lasso, knowing that I would have to work an extra hour at the end of the day. Yeah, I'm hopeful that answers your question.
Yeah, it's all about adaptability. That's what I'm getting from this. Is
Yes.
your life and your business looked a lot different when you had a 2-year-old versus a 3-year-old versus a 5, 6, 7-year-old. It's going to keep changing. And I think that's what's going to help you avoid that burnout. I think hustle culture is one of those things that sound like discipline from the outside. You start at 9, come in at 8, right? Do that extra work. But sometimes I felt more personally in my healthcare industry is that it was kind of like self-abandoning from the inside, like self-abandoning, feeling and knowing my intuition was feeling drained. I was feeling that burnout, but consistently showing up for somebody else and abandoning myself. And I think a lot of people don't know the difference until they've actually lived in it long enough to feel that burnout. And I think hopefully with this new culture, these podcasts, business owners, it's showing that you don't have to run yourself until you burn out. You can see the signs a lot sooner.
The full circle moment of all of it was when I became a mom. Prior to being a mom, one of the typical things of having ADHD is like needing constant approval, always afraid of rejection, wanting to be a people pleaser and like saying yes to everything. There is, in my experience, nothing like having a child that makes you want to abandon all of that and then doubly entrepreneurship on top of it. I'm in a stage right now where I'm saying no to a lot of things, which is not typically how I operate. But if it's not in alignment with like what I have going on that week, or like I don't feel excited to go, I'm not doing it. And so I think it can be a very like exposing and soul searching thing, both becoming a parent and entrepreneurship, that you're like, I frankly don't have the time. What I do with my time is important to me because I know that if I'm scheduled every second of the day, I'm not resetting. I'm not allowing myself and my brain to like come down, chill. I'm not like on. I'm very much in a stage in my life between motherhood and entrepreneurship that I'm like, no, I'm not going to that party because I just frankly don't feel like going. And it takes a lot of self-discovery through both of those things to really get to the core of that. And I think what's helpful for me, because I know I'm still a people pleaser at the end of the day, I want to make my family and friends happy. I have chosen this group of people to be around me and kind of created this community that I want to be a part of. And so saying no is very hard for me. I always have FOMO. I love a good party. I love a good hang. And so that has been hard for me to say like, no, I'm not going to go. I'd rather sit on the couch and do nothing, or whatever it might be, knowing in the back of my mind that like, this is not forever. This is a temporary time frame where I need to, for whatever reason, my brain and my body feel like when you have downtime, you need to take that time for yourself or your family. Mm-hmm. And it has been very beneficial for me to make those decisions, which I know can be super hard, but I'm definitely learning that there are benefits to slowing down a bit.
Yeah, I think that incorporates that authenticity and that alignment piece that go with your business and also you yourself as a business owner. When you say no, it's not coming from a place of like not wanting to go, but it's more like you want to show up authentically and present to that person. And if you're already feeling like you need that downtime, that is more important right now to be able to show up in the future more authentically, more present to those things. But you have to kind of fill your own cup first. And that's what I was going to ask is like, how does that ADHD diagnosis kind of change the way you understand before like burning out? So that's a perfect answer. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Now, so you've been running your own podcast for 4 seasons now. What has kept you going in the seasons where it didn't feel like it was working? Because I think that the real test of whether something is aligned is not when it's exciting, but when you're going through those times of like writer's block, like that kind of energy where it's a little bit more quiet, but you still want to kind of show up authentically.
I think I've just continued to use like myself and what's interesting to me as a compass. Every season has been something different, a different focus. My first season was just me asking questions prior to having kids and being like, tell me everything about your birth or tell me everything about pregnancy. What is parenthood like? My second season was me as a new mom. My third season was when I got into entrepreneurship. So season 3 and 4 were very heavy on the building a business, what it looked like, simply because that's the life space that I was in. And then now I find myself at this weird intersection of like that hustle culture, which is has merit and it allows freedom for a lot of women specifically, which is great. But I don't totally align with that area. It's more for me, it has been interesting in this 5th season. I have kind of gone back to my nonprofit roots, and that we're focusing on moms and women who are making impact, whether it is in their business, in their industry, in their community, through advocacy. And so for me, what was most aligned and most interesting in this season for me is being inspired by other people and other women who aren't necessarily doing the same thing as me, or aren't doing like the entrepreneurship journey in the way that I've been doing it, but are mission focused, mission led, making an impact. More women doing things that are inspiring to us to propel us forward to do the things that we're interested in doing, or how we can make a difference, both large and small.
Wow. You know, what I've noticed, what you were mentioning about your podcast, it almost sounds like the podcast has evolved with you. Like you started off asking questions about motherhood and birthing, and now it's slowly going into mothers that run their own business or create things for the community. And it's a direct reflection of yourself. And it shows you that maybe when you first started, there was a lot of talk about like having a niche, picking a niche and staying in that niche. But you will probably see as you were continuing and growing your business that you are the niche. So niching down might have led to burnout, or feeling like that imposter syndrome might have came up again, where it's like, I'm not really resonating with continuing to talk about the same thing over and over again, and evolving over time. Has that resonated with you? Like, growing and kind of evolving your voice versus sticking with a niche?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I started with no niche, of just like questions about motherhood and parenthood, and always got the advice that I needed to niche down. And I just didn't know how. I had so many different interests. A lot, like you said, a lot of my first seasons were about birth work and holistic practitioners, and then flowed into more entrepreneur areas, which did overflow because I do have listeners that are doulas that have their own business. Yeah, the only reason have been able to continue to do this podcast is because I love recording. I love getting on the mic and just listening to other people's stories. And that's kind of how I have continued to do it, is that like I'm just a vessel for the storytelling. And I know that if I'm inspired by the work that people are doing, other moms and women are as well.
It resonates so deeply with me. I love how you mentioned that you're a vessel for storytelling, because that's exactly how I started my podcast. Like I just would love watching people kind of get out of that 9 to 5, be successful in what that means to them and how they did it. And I always wondered, because as social media, sometimes it could be a highlight reel, but I always loved the people that showed up authentically and actually told their truth and where they actually came from, which was like a burnout 9 to 5, a divorce, a toxic relationship, and seeing them now. And I always thought like I wanted to talk to them and see those transitional periods so that I felt inspired. And I said, why not bring this to a platform to just show people like the inside scoop, and hopefully that resonates with them and inspires other people too. Even if you love your 9 to 5 corporate job, I think there's still like things that you can pull out of each of our podcasts that can inspire us. Like you don't have to be a mother to learn about motherhood and what that means to that person and how it inspired them to create. There's a connecting line through all of womanhood, really, that can inspire us all. So the Mama Making podcast is centered around mom making an impact for now, and that will evolve over time. Now we have your other business, which is, and it kind of, would you call it your other business, or would it kind of like mesh with your podcast, the Collabs Creative?
Yeah, so they have lived very separately for a while, but I think this season is starting to just naturally cross over. So yeah, they're kind of one in the same right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like they both focus on telling real stories of small businesses. So, what's something about running both the podcast and the business that nobody has really talked about honestly?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think one of the things that I have struggled with is that my podcast and my business, like my podcast was never a like a lead generator for my business, and now it kind of is, simply because I have made it that way, if that makes sense, unintentionally. And it was because I just focused on what was interesting to me at the time, and that happened to be entrepreneurship. So as this season goes on, I've actually never mentioned this on my own podcast or another one. As this season goes on, I am definitely going to start merging my audiences. I think that there is the one through line between my podcast and the work that I do at Collabs Creative is that we are simply storytelling. We do at Collabs Creative, we focus on small business owners and creators simply because we know how hard it is to like be boots on the ground doing the work every day and then having to think of like, oh, what social media graphic do I need to put up, or what kind of print material, and who do I ask and what do I do? So I think our focus is starting with people small and working with them as they continue to grow. We want your social media to be a reflection of your business, your story, your services, who you are, who you're trying to help. Most people get into business because they're trying to solve a problem or trying to help people in a specific way. And so I think the story is what kind of should be centerpiece there. And it's the same with the podcast. It's like I said, I'm just creating a platform for people to tell their stories. The next piece of that is community. So building community is something that has always been important to me. It's something that I've really enacted in my own life and would love to see it kind of shift to my podcast and business life to create more like community, friendship, but also mentorship. And that like a lot of us are first time entrepreneurs. We don't know the ins and outs. We don't know like what's new, what's going on. They're starting to condense a bit into being the same audience, being the same people I'm talking to. So one day would love to see a community kind of sprout out of that, if that answers your question.
Mm-hmm. It's really interesting how you're starting to blend these things together, and it's because the centerpiece is yourself, and people resonate with what you say, and people will follow you. That's what I've learned is like social media followers actually are like your followers. They're your audience, and they will grow and evolve with you. And what you're describing is something I think is super undervalued, is that the idea that your story is your business. So not just you marketing like your actual business, because when you lead with who you really are, you don't have to find your people, they find you. Right?
Absolutely.
So before we keep going, we have kind of mentioned your businesses, your podcast, but this I want to kind of give you like the open stage to talk a little bit more, maybe dive into what you have for people or what's available, where they can find you. All of the links will be in the show notes, but this is just your little stage to kind of share and explain more.
Yeah, so my business, first and foremost, is Collabs Creative. We're a digital marketing studio for small business owners and creatives. We do everything from social media marketing to brands, rebrands. We have an ongoing creative partnership, which is kind of our signature premier package where you get access to us at a certain level to help you with everything. You can find us at www.collabscreative.com and then everywhere at collabs.creative on socials. For the podcast, it's the Mama, M-A-M-A podcast. And you can find us everywhere on socials at the Mama Making Podcast. And then our website is themamamakingpodcast.com.
Oh, that's amazing. Yep, all the links will be in the show notes. Go check Jessica out. She has a lot to offer for new entrepreneurs, maybe entrepreneurs that wanting to repivot and just learn from her, honestly. So before we close off here, I wanted to sit here for a minute or two as we end, because I think you're in a really specific position. You're building something for moms while being in the middle of your own version of that journey. What has this season taught you about yourself that you couldn't have known before you started?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say that it has taught me that I'm much more capable than I ever realized I was, and that I have the innate intuition to move forward on things. Everything I need to know, I already have within me, and putting myself in the room, putting myself in the position that I never did before. I think the ability to trust and push myself has gone wild in the last few months. years specifically. And yeah, I think entrepreneurship and motherhood has taught me that there's so much more that I'm capable of. And putting myself in the room and trusting myself have been two very big things for me.
It's like you refined your intuition. You took the 20 years to finally listen to your intuition, and now you're using it as a business tool. That is so cool. So,
Yeah.
one last question here. What do you want to say to the mom who's in the middle of figuring it out? Maybe they just had a baby, they just lost a job, maybe both, and they're trying to figure out how to build something without losing themselves in the process.
I think typical advice is very much like you need to find yourself before you get into something. And like I just said, it took me getting into something to find myself. So I think first and foremost, everything is figure outable and get throughable. So for like someone in early motherhood, these stages are temporary. Everything is temporary. Everything can be figured out. And I think when you put yourself, maybe I think saying put yourself first is very, it isn't authentic to me because never am I putting myself first, but putting yourself as a priority I think can help you to start to identify what's important to me, what feels right, and then that can allow you to kind of move forward to your next thing. And maybe it's just dreaming about it, maybe it's just brainstorming until you feel like, okay, I'm settled to do something, or that pivotal moment comes that you weren't expecting. And you've already been thinking, what can I do next? What feels right to me? Because motherhood changes you so much. And it's another example of like, you don't know until you're in it. And so I would say be gentle to yourself in that life phase, and just allow it to come to you. It will eventually. And then for the people who are like wanting to get into something, I would say start slow. I think everybody thinks like you just need to jump right into it. If you're someone who has to work that 9 to 5 to pay your bills and take care of your family, by all means, please continue to do that. But carve out some time for yourself on the weekends. Maybe it's 2 hours to research an area that you're interested in, or invest in your time in what you're passionate about to kind of take the steps to get there. So again, I think just like giving yourself the chance and opportunity. Sometimes that is literally carving it out in your calendar, but everything is doable.
Yeah, I love the saying where it's like, use your 9 to 5 to fund your 5 to 9 to leave your 9 to 5. Like that resonated so
Absolutely.
much with me when I was working in corporate. But yes, I love how you mentioned that like you can do both. Like you can plan your escape while you're still in the middle of working a 9 to 5 if you know deep down that this isn't forever. And when you also mentioned trying different things, like there's so many things that I've learned and picked up and courses that I've learned and it just didn't resonate with me anymore and I put it aside. You shouldn't put shame on learning because you will very quickly realize what is meant for you and what's not. And you won't really know that until you actually pick it up and learn, and you're never going to feel ready. I think a lot of people they're like, okay, no, I'm gonna start this podcast, I'm gonna start this YouTube video, I'm gonna start this YouTube channel when I find my voice or I know what to say or I've taken this course and I can do it. Obviously there's some things that you need to like take courses for before going and facilitating it, but a lot of these things are learned through experience. You will see this in Jessica's story as well, is that it wasn't the degrees or the education, that background that made her start her business. It was the experiences that she learned along the way. So you're never going to be fully ready, and the experiences are going to make you more well equipped.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And every experience is just an addition to where you're supposed to be going. So I think there's no terrible experiences or no failures in trying
it's
things,
true.
because everything is a seed of you planting to get to where you're supposed to be. And I think if we transition our thinking to be a little bit more like that everything is getting us to where we want to or need to be, we can look at things a little different.
Yeah, I love that because I think motherhood Motherhood and entrepreneurship, they have this reputation of being a thing that could maybe slow you down or take you off track, or you're trying to learn something and now you're like years behind. But what you're describing is the opposite. It clarified you. Throughout all of this story that you've mentioned today, it made the why impossible to ignore. Right. And that kind of clarity is actually the most powerful thing that you can bring to something and build something from there.
I love that. I think as women, we're capable of doing so much. And sometimes we just need to hear from someone else that we're capable of doing it and just to jumpstart us. Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, it's so true. I hope anybody that's watching this podcast can kind of resonate with our conversation today. And all of our links will be in the show notes if you want to reach out. But thank you so much, Jessica, for coming on the podcast today. It was such an honor to have you.
Thank you. This was amazing. I've loved chatting with you. Thanks.
Of course. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Unclocked and Unbothered. Jessica and I had way more in common than I was expecting going into this conversation, and I think that's what made this feel so easy. What I keep coming back to is the whole building on vibes thing, because I think what she's really describing is what happens when you finally stop outsourcing your decision to a strategy someone else wrote and start running everything through your own internal compass first. And that's not reckless, that's actually the most sustainable way to build something, because it's the only version that doesn't require you to become someone else to maintain it. You can find Jessica at the Mama Making Podcast on Instagram, and all the links will be in the show notes below. I'll see you in the next one. Stay unclocked and unbothered.